Hi all, it's Shelly with Building Sustainable Sales. Thanks for coming back to the channel. And this week I want to answer a few questions that I've received recently. A lot of these have to do with the recent episode series, Pipeline and Process. So let's just jump right into that first question. The first question is why 3? And that might be a little bit awkward if you haven't heard me talk about the rule of 3, which I don't believe I've talked about here on the channel. So first, let me answer what is the rule of 3, and then I will answer why 3. So first of all, the rule of 3 comes when you're in discovery and you're in a discovery meeting. And when I'm talking with a potential client and we're going over just some of the data and statistics within their organization, I'm always listening for those pain points. And I know that you guys have heard me talk about the pain points before. And really what I'm looking to hear is at least 3 pain points that align with the solutions that I can provide to them, right? With that product or service that I can provide with them. Those 3 areas are key in understanding, 1, how can I help them? And 2, is there enough pain, right, within the organization where I can affect enough change where they feel like they've gotten enough out of the experience of working with me? And, this may not work for all businesses out there as it relates to pain points, but the rule of 3 to me is really critical when it comes to especially service-based companies and organizations. Simply if you're working with an organization and you're talking with that owner or you're talking with the person within the organization that you've connected to, and you're in that discovery meeting and you're asking them about the challenges, like what are they seeing, what are they experiencing, all of those different questions that we ask as part of discovery. And you really only get to one pain point. We're struggling to grow our revenue. Okay, that's a pain point, right? We want to delve a little bit deeper into that. So tell me more about why you feel like you're struggling to grow your revenue. Well, we've had consistent turnover in our sales department. Our marketing campaign is not working, or it's not driving the right clients to us in order for our sales team to engage and close the right type of business, right? Well, we've heard one pain point, right? Revenue's not growing. But we've uncovered now 2 other pain points potentially underneath that are causing that one giant pain point in a company with lack of revenue or revenue growth, right? We've now heard them talk about that they've had staff turnover. There's probably some underlying issues that are causing that. We need to delve into that further. And the second one is the marketing campaign is not driving the right customers. So do they have the right customer profile that they're focused in on for their solutions, that type of thing, right? So now we're uncovering more than just one pain point. But if they come to you and say, hey, you know what, our revenue is just not growing, and that's our major pain point. We've done all of these other things, and it's just not really consistently driving the performance. Yeah, could I help them potentially in uncovering that underlying issue that could be driving their revenue to not grow? Yep. Would I potentially work with this client? Maybe. But I would also position it in some type of the solution that I provide to them as something very simplified in that space, right? I really want to work with those organizations that have at least 3 challenging issues that they're going through, because I know I can affect significant change and opportunity to drive that. And just about everybody that I've talked to recently, especially about this rule of 3, has started to apply it within their own business. And they're really finding that it is critical and that it is something that can drive success. If you are talking with a client or a potential client and they don't really have any pain points, or their pain points are relatively limited, their mindset shift potentially into working right with someone who can provide them solutions might not be as big as somebody who's going through a little bit more of the challenges, if that makes sense, right? Or their focus or their aspect around the pain that they're in may not be as big as what it needs to be in order for them to make a decision to work with you. So just something to keep in mind when you're in that discovery meeting, you hit those 3 sweet spots, you hit those 3 pain points, you know that this person is probably going to convert with you if you can provide them the right solutions. So that was the rule of 3, and it really kind of answered that why 3, right? Second question I have been asked recently is, how do I ask the hard questions in discovery? And that can be challenging. When you're in discovery, it's a vulnerable moment for that potential client that is going through something. And I think it's really important that we approach those discovery meetings very open-minded, that we set the tone from the beginning. I talk about tone a lot in taking command of a meeting and making sure that you are leading the client to answer you, not maybe the answers you want to hear, but answer you in an open and honest way. And really, how I have that conversation with the client is I started off at the very beginning, and I'll position it with, we've been introduced to each other, and it seems like that I might be someone who can help you with some of the challenges that you feel like you're going through within your organization. In order for me to understand better if I can provide you the right solutions, I'm going to ask you a lot of questions today. It's going to feel a little bit like I'm interrogating you, but that's really not the intention. The intention for me is to uncover as much as possible so that I know if I'm the right fit for you and can help you grow your company. With that, there might be some tough questions here that I'm going to ask you to answer, and I'm hoping that you will be open to answering me those to your best ability, right? So I'm already positioning that it's going to be a little bit of a Q&A session, right? A little bit interrogation-like. I'm going to ask a lot of questions to dive into what's going on within their organization. One of the toughest questions to ask is, what's your annual revenue? Some owners know, some don't, and it's kind of scary when they don't know that, right? But it's one of those answers that a lot of times that if we are providing some type of, especially service-based solution to a customer or client, we really kind of need to know what their revenue is so that we know, can they frankly afford to work with us, right? If you are selling, let's just say you're talking to a manufacturing organization and they have a new product line that they're rolling out and they need a part that your company provides, right? Maybe they need silicone chips, or I don't know, I'm making things up in my head, right? But you kind of need to know what their revenue, their annual revenue is. Can they afford to buy what you're selling at the end of the day? Because if not, you may not be a fit, or maybe you need to restructure how you're going to approach them as it relates to the solutions. Maybe in that similar case of the silicone chips, they don't buy everything outright from the beginning, right? They buy in increments in certain amounts of times so that as they need them, right, or as they have revenue coming in, they can afford to have your services. And so the deal might be structured a little bit differently, right? So asking those tough questions, you really got to ask a lot of those in discovery, and you've got to make sure that you've positioned the conversation to be open and honest as much as possible so that you can get the right answers to understand, what kind of deal structure or what kind of relationship that can be had. And the third question that I've heard lately is, where do I find clients? And it really comes back to if you have built out your customer profile, if you've built out a client profile effectively, right? You've talked about demographics in the space, geographic location, or revenue threshold within a company organization size, or people size, depending upon what type of business you're in. If you have built out your client profile and really understand the types of clients that you're looking for, then you can start to zero in on that type of client profile and where they hang out, right? So companies and organizations that are in the startup mode, that if that's a space that you work, are going to be in a different space. They're going to be in different associations. They're going to be in different groups than potentially, large corporations that are 100 years old and have hundreds of thousands of employees. They're going to operate from a different level and a different scale, and they're going to be in a different space, right? So we have to approach the client base where they are, and we have to do that by understanding our client profiles and zeroing in. Let's give a great example, right? If you are targeting small to mid-sized business, that's the space that I play in. If you're targeting them, you're not necessarily going to focus in on big national associations to tap into that business, right? You're going to tap into some smaller business communities locally, manufacturing associations in your city or in your state, women business owner organizations, that type of space. Potentially, you could focus in on chambers. I have found for my type of business that chambers aren't necessarily the ideal space for me to engage in. Peer groups. Peer groups are a great resource for the small to mid-sized space, but you have to focus in on the right type of peer group. and there's a lot out there. Those that are targeting for things like weekly business connections and referrals, weekly business referrals, tend to benefit the small business much more than they do, for example, someone like me in the consulting space, right? If you're going into those types of meetings and people are asking for referrals for, their lawn care company and things like that, that's great. And I might be able to do that for them. But the referrals back to me from those organizations sometimes aren't as effective. So it's really finding that sweet spot and testing. It's the same thing that you would do in marketing where you're testing your messaging. You're going to test organizations. I met with someone recently and this question came up. And what I told them was that if I belong to an association or peer network or a networking group, and I've gone to them and I've been very consistent with my messaging, I've been very consistent in my participation with that organization for a year, and I'm really not getting anything out of it, I'm not getting that return on the time and financial investment I'm making into that organization, then it's probably not the right fit for me. It may be shorter time window that you look at, but I always look at, every hour that we spend in that type of business development is a cost. It's a cost because our hours are valuable in the time that we spend, and you're financially probably spending money to belong and or participate in that meeting. So, taking a look at that of what is it generating. Sometimes it's a long play. I have a peer organization that I belong to that I value greatly because it helps me not only in potentially connecting to new clients, right? So business development, but it also helps me focus on building my business and keeping my mindset right as a business owner. And so, it's sort of twofold, but it really took a full year within that organization before I had my first true client that is paying for the services, the expense, I should say, of belonging to that organization and more. So, you got to kind of figure out, I hate to say it that way, but you've got to test the waters, but do it based upon your client profile when you're looking for where are your clients hanging out. Those are 3 questions that came to me recently, and I wanted to address those. If you have a question, I would love it if you'd shoot it over to me. You can put it in the comments. You can send me an email. If you find that you're enjoying these series and you'd like to hear more, I'd love to, if you want to talk about something different within the sales organization or the sales processes, I would love to do that with everybody here on the channel. Also, if you feel like you're getting something out of this, I'd love for you to subscribe to the channel and leave, and connect that way. Or you can follow the links that I provide to my website, or you can connect with me on LinkedIn. I'll include that information, and hopefully I can help you guys out even more. We'll talk later.